and the question is asked by Narada. Now, what is the name of this chapter? What's the name of this chapter? The name of this chapter is, maybe if you want to just show the name of the chapter all the way at the top. It's called Purusha Sukta Confirmed. Can anyone tell me or think about why is it called confirmed? What is Purusha Sukta and why is it confirmed? What does this mean? What does Purusha mean? Who's Purusha? Yeah, so Purusha means the person, but the supreme person, right? Purusha. The word Purusha actually is combined of two words, Puru and Sha, iti Purusha. That means that Sha means to have, and Puru means everything. Somebody who has everything. And it also denotes a personality. Interestingly, the word person is a cognate of the word Purusha. If you go back to Old Latin, it's the same terminology. So Purusha later became person that we read. So Purusha, Sukta. Does anyone know what Sukta means? Don't tell me a vegetable preparation. It is a vegetable preparation from Bengal. It's called Shukta, but this is Sukta. What does Sukta mean? If we break down the word Sukta, Su, Dhan, Ukta, Iti Sukta. Ukta means to speak. We hear the word Uvacha. That means somebody speaking. So Ukta means spoken. Su means glorification, spoken glorification. So Purusha Sukta are essentially prayers from the Rig Veda that were spoken to glorify the Supreme Person. Does anyone know how do those prayers start? Yes, please.
Because Narada Muni was asking Lord Brahma if there's anybody greater than him, and so he's like glorifying Lord Brahma is glorifying the Lord and saying how there is, and then explaining more about him.
Of course, yeah. But do you know how the Purusha Sukta prayers begin in the Rig Veda? You might have heard it's a very common phrase. If you see old Indian documentaries about temples, this is the most common recited prayer that happened. Sahasra Shircha Purusha. It starts in that meter and it goes on. That the Supreme Lord has thousands of heads, Sahasra, thousand, Shirsha, heads, thousands of legs, thousands of arms. So these are prayers from Rig Veda. So these prayers are spoken in the Veda. But here it's called Purusha Sukta confirmed. Can anyone tell me why are these prayers confirmed? What's the logic behind that? There is a reason for why the Puranas exist. If you look at the Vedic canon, can anyone tell me what is the Vedic canon? What kinds of books are comprised of the Vedic canon? Upanishads, very good, and Puranas and Vedas, Shrutis, that which is spoken, that which is heard, Smritis, that which is remembered, Itihasas, that means the history of what has happened, right? So Samhitas, kind of. Samhitas, technically, we can say that, yeah. And then Upanishads are part of this broader text called Vedanta. Then Sutras, there's Sutras, aphorisms. So the Vedic canon is massive. There's a lot of text and a lot of information. But what is the primary text that has been spoken or written for us? The Vedas. The Vedas were the primary text, and anything else that was given after is in relation to the Vedic texts, the four Vedas. What are the four Vedas? Rig Veda, Sama Veda, Yajurveda, and Atharva Veda. So originally there was actually only one Veda, which Vyasadeva talks about. That's why sometimes he's called as Veda Vyasa. That means because he was the compiler of the Vedas. They were previously spoken and remembered, but Vyasa wrote it down because he knew what's going to come, what age is going to come, so he was preparing in advance. So these Vedas were one, he broke it down into three. And then the fourth one was later added, which contains Ayurveda and all other kinds of knowledge and wisdom. So now these Vedas are our primary texts. Then to explain the Vedas, Vedanta Sutra was written in order to understand the Vedanta. And the reason why all these other texts exist is to confirm what is given in the Vedas. So the logic of Purusha Sukta confirm means that the Purusha Sukta prayers which are given in Rig Veda are confirmed here by the Puranas. And that's the reason why Puranas exist. Because a lot of people would read the Vedas and were getting confused. Do we have any, can anyone tell me where does this happen? Where is this conversation given? That Vyasadeva has written everything and he's still saying that people are still confused and I'm confused. Thank you. It is in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam where Vyasa has written all the Vedic canon, almost all the Vedic canon. And still he's not satisfied. And still the people are not satisfied. They are also confused and he's confused that I did all this hard work. Why is this not yielding any result? And so at that point, who appears in front of him? His guru, his spiritual master appears to dispel the confusion. And we see that throughout the Vedic text, throughout our stories, this theme is always there. The disciple is confused and the guru appears. Arjuna is confused on the battlefield, Krishna appears. Parikshit Maharaj is confused about his duty of a dying person, and who appears? Shukadev Goswami. Now, similarly here, Narada, Vyasa's guru, is confused, and who appears? Is Guru Brahma. So we see this thread all throughout. So if you ever find yourself in a point of confusion, you know what to do. Whatever these personalities did, find your guru and hear from them and understand. So we see in first canto, Vyasa is confused and his guru Narada is speaking. In the second canto, Narada is confused and his guru is speaking. So we see how this parampara, this is called parampara, the same lineage, the same practice that keeps on going on between teachers and students. And that's what we are receiving too. We are confused. But what is our duty? What do I want to do? Should I look for a job in AI right now because that's going to take up all the jobs? Or should I not look for any jobs because AI is going to take up all the jobs? What do I do right now? All of these challenges and many other problems exist. What should I do? What's the political situation of the world right now? What's happening? There's wars happening. What am I supposed to do? So it's literally the same situation that we are dealing with right now. And it behooves us to ask this question. And one way to connect through Sri Guru is to connect through the parampara. That's why we worship Sri Guru this morning and hear from Srila Prabhupada and Acharyas and teachers. So anyway, so that's the logic of Purusha Sukta confirmed. The Puranas exist. So when Vyasa was confused, Narada told him that you have done everything. You have written about everything possible under the sun except the most important thing. And actually, you have written about it, but you have not glorified it. And so, bhakti and all of these texts already exist in many traditions, but it's not glorified enough to understand, to give it the supreme importance. So, when Vyasa wrote the Purana, which is called as the Srimad Bhagavat Mahapurana, it's considered the king of all the Puranas. Then it confirms what was given in the Veda. So Vyasa, that's why sometimes it is said that we don't need anything else beyond Srimad Bhagavatam. And we should ask why Vyasa wrote all these books. Why don't we need anything else beyond Srimad Bhagavatam? Because the Bhagavatam confirms everything that is given and takes up the cream. And that's what is given to us. And so that's why this Srimad Bhagavatam was written in that understanding. And now this is the verse that comes up. So Purusha Sukta prayers are being confirmed here, and I'm going to talk about a little bit on that. But before that, what is this verse telling us, right? There's a very important aspect of this verse. I'll be honest, sometimes when I read these philosophical verses, I just take them at face value and I move on. Like, oh yeah, just prayers, give me some story, give me some personal experience of what happened to Dhruva, what was he thinking, give me 10th canto and give me understanding. So sometimes these prayers, we read, we understand, all right, take it at face value. But I thought maybe, what if I don't take the verse at face value and I really try to go underneath it? And it's kind of a meta commentary if you think about it. This verse says that the world that we see, actually, let me rephrase, the material world is only 25% of the total creation, and 75% is the spiritual world. Now think of it as an iceberg. When you look at an iceberg, you just see the tip of the iceberg. And somebody may think that, oh, this is the iceberg. But when you look underneath it, then you realize that, oh my goodness, it's massive. So similarly, this world, and sometimes these verses can be just the tip of the iceberg. We see them at face value, and then when we start going deeper, then we realize, wow, this is wild. This is beyond what I could think of. So similarly, this verse is saying that everything that we see, everything that we interact with, everything that we talk about, Everything that we experience is just the 25% creation. Nothing else. It's the actual creation is beyond. So what if we start wondering that how does that 75% look like? What would that look for me? Can I experience and understand the 75% reality? It's kind of a question that our dear friend Neo asks in the movie. What movie am I referring to? The Matrix. Neo is in the Matrix, and he's thinking, is this all in all that I see, or is there something beyond this? And of course, naturally, through the course of the movie, we realize that it's actually much more beyond what he's experiencing. What he's seeing is kind of 25% of the reality. I guess another example to look at it is that you log on to the internet. You all have personas, you have your Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook and whatnot, and you have your persona there. And if you just live in that world and think that this is all in all, that this is the 25% creation, and then when you log off and realize that, oh wow, there's the whole reality that exists around. So we have these two dimensions that exist. And think of it, if somebody is born, there is an old experiment called thought experiment done by Plato called what is it called? The allegory of the cave. And what he talks about is that if somebody is born in a cave and just sees the representation of the world, the reflection of the light on the wall, and thinks that is reality, for him the actual reality would be very different. It's the same analogy that was used in the Matrix and then that's used in all traditions. Of course, it comes from the Vedic tradition. So similarly, if somebody's on the internet, born on the internet, just thinking of that, and lives their life in a simulated reality, and then somebody comes and tells them that, hey, there's more. This is just 25%. There's more. What would it be? So so the verse actually in Rig Veda is very similar to this verse. So the Rig Veda verse is Padeshu Vishva Bhutani. So this verse in Bhagavatam is Padeshu Sarva Bhutani Tripad Asyamratam Divi Pumsa Astito Padovidu. It's literally the same verse but in a different language. So, and you will find that there are certain verses which are kind of reused between texts and books. They sound differently, but essentially it's the same meaning. The meanings of the Bhagavatam and the words chosen here are infused by Vyasadev's bhakti and devotion, which was not so apparent in the Vedic tradition, in the Vedic canon. So that's why sometimes it reeks of Mayavad a little bit. If you look at the Vedas and if you just read them, there's a little sense of Mayavad that the Supreme Lord has legs everywhere and bodies everywhere. What does this mean? How can that be one person? But here Vyasadeva actually makes it spiritual because he goes and talks about the spiritual world, which the Vedas don't necessarily talk about. Okay. All right. So now explain the context that, right, Narada is asking the question. And what is the first question that Narada asks? What is the first question that leads to this whole conversation? It's kind of a brilliant question that Narada is asking. It's a question that I was thinking about that question. The question that Narada asks is, how is the Supreme Person's energy distributed across reality? It's kind of a wild question to think of it because there's so many assumptions Narada is making and so much knowledge is there. He's assuming or he's saying that there is a Supreme Person. He's saying that Supreme Person has energy. He's saying that those energies are distributed, and he's saying that there is a reality, but I'm not aware of that reality. So that's the context of this verse which Narada asks, and then Brahma is responding to him. And it's essentially not an academic curiosity because Narada Muni was not an academic. He's a liberated soul, but he's seeking to understand so that he can serve more effectively. If he can understand the energies of the Lord, then he can serve them nicely. It's similar to us in our situation. If we can truly understand the energies of the Lord, then of course naturally service develops in us. For instance, you might be living in this ashram and this is a table, this is a bench, just throw it around, let me just move it around. Versus recognizing that, oh, this is the energy of the Lord that is being used in service. Then I would of course naturally take care of it. So Narada is actually asking on our behalf to understand that in reality, sometimes we see some differentiation that, oh, this is not for service. Sorry, keep hitting this thing. This is for service. Keep hitting this thing. Energy of the Lord, right? So the same principle that can we go over the differentiation between things? beings? And can we start seeing everything as an energy of the Lord? That's the realization that Narada wants us to have. And that's why he's having the conversation with Vyasadeva. And it's not an I know everything mentality. Although Narada is one of our acharyas, great teachers, and yet always seeking deeper realization. Okay. So now we are going to look briefly into the Sanskrit. So the word starts with Padeshu, right? Padeshu means 1/4. Now, I was thinking that the entire idea of science and capturing and understanding the world in terms of distances and angular momentum and charge and all of this exists in the material reality. That's why numbers also exist in the sense that I want to understand something in terms of distance. The spiritual reality is beyond this. The spiritual reality exists at the level of meaning. What do I mean by that? The material reality exists with the idea that, or currently the way modern science reads material reality is that if it sees the sun coming up, it wouldn't describe the poetic or meaning behind it. It would say that, oh yeah, this ball of fire, it's comprised of this nuclear fusion reaction that's happening. I see it. This is the wavelength that's coming from the sun. And all meaning is lost in the way modern science treats it. But Srimad Bhagavatam is essentially doing the same thing if we take this verse at face value. That yeah, 25% is material, 75% is spiritual, but it's actually not even comprehensible to apply this 25-75% logic. So then why is it being used, right? That's a great question to ask. But why is this being used? Well, how I understand it is that it's a cosmic frame of reference that's giving us a perception of how to understand the divine. Because again, we cannot apply our intelligence to understand the supreme, right? We have heard it. But then why are we reading these things? Why are we doing it? The entire point is that we work from the frame of reference that we have. So if we can understand that 25% is just the material and the rest of it is spiritual, then it helps us put things into perspective. And that's why some of these words and terminologies being used. Interestingly, it's quite similar to the scientific understanding, which says that dark matter is almost 75% of the world, and the rest of it is the matter that we see and we interact with, which is, that's why Srila Prabhupada wrote a book about it. What book is that? What book is that? Which Srila Prabhupada based that entire book on this foundation, that Easy Journey to Other Planets. He wrote a book called Easy Journey to Other Planets, one of the first books that Srila Prabhupada published, a small thin book. Fascinating book, because at that time, this discovery of dark matter or antimatter was discovered. And Srila Prabhupada immediately understood and knew, and he wrote about it as an analogy. Now it says Sarva Bhutani, so all living entities. Saha means of the Supreme Person, the cosmic Purusha, Sthita Padaha, reservoir of material opulence. But if you break the word Sthita Padaha, that's how Prabhupada translates it. It also means the foundation or the standing place. And we saw in the purport, the last thing that Prabhupada wrote in the sentence is that such things are situated on the head, Adhai Murdasu. So this verse is making a comparison. It is saying that the material reality exists at the bottom floor in one sense, at the feet. Pada, it's called, what is it called? Sthita Pada, at the bottom. And spiritual reality exists at Adhai Murdasu. So what they are saying is that this cosmic Purusha, this cosmic form of the Lord that is being described, which is almost comprised of these planets and these eyes are these things, and and Krishna talks about it in the Bhagavad Gita. It is saying that if you want to really understand this cosmic Purusha, understand that material reality is at the lowest rung and the spiritual reality is at the highest rung. And there's a lot that is happening. That's why these words is used. Now, everything that we consider real, our bodies, relationship, parents, planets, cosmic time, that's all the food of the reality. And people are blown away by when they discover and they cultivate this curiosity of what's happening in this world. But think of it, that's just the lowest rung. So what kind of reality exists at the highest rung? In some sense, as devotees, we take it for granted. We take it for granted the spiritual reality that, oh yeah, it's it's Chintamani Dham and Chintamani Prakarashu. There's a Kalpa Vriksha, there's all kinds of things. But actually to really fathom it, that I am blown away by a beautiful sunrise that happens. And that's the lowest level of reality. Think of it, the highest level of reality. When I go to Yosemite and I see this beautiful El Capitan, I'm blown away. This is beautiful. Then what exists at that plane of reference? We almost have to start thinking like that as a curiosity and not something we take for granted. Now, it's also says it's also defined as sthita pada. That means it's the feet of essentially of this cosmic person. So it's where the cosmic person stands, and we are just barely touching the surface of the feet, and we are thinking that this is great. Versus, how does his head look like? What happens there? And then the second half of the verse comes, which talks about these three qualities, and that's the if you forget everything from this class, just remember these three things, and I want to tell you why. Amritam, Shemam, Abhayam. Can you repeat after me? Amritam, Shemam, Abhayam. Amritam means deathlessness, Shemam means complete welfare, as Prabhupada translated, and Abhayam means fearlessness. And so it's describing that what happens below at the lowest rung and what kind of qualities exist at the highest rung. Again, we don't have the faculties with our current material senses to understand what's happening at the highest rung. So we only understand in terms of meaning and only understand in terms of description of it. Because my senses can only see from, is any scientist in the room? I think you're a scientist. What is the visual wavelength we can see? 480 to 720 nanometers, right? It's very limited. A dog can see more than me. I mean, think of it. A dog can see more than I can see. An animal can hear more than I can hear. So out of the 20% of reality that is manifested to us, we are only seeing 0.1% of it, maybe half of it, maybe less than that. So how much of material reality is unknown, and forget about realizing spiritual reality. So the acharyas use words like this, Amritam, Shemam, Abhayam, to at least give us an understanding, to give us a meaning, because they know that we don't have the qualification and the qualities nor the yogic siddhis to actually see the creation as it is. Certain yogis in Satya Yuga had those qualities. Certain yogis even today may have those qualities. We see some examples from Radhanath Swami's book, The Journey Home, where he goes to see Swami Ram and all these people, and they can see certain things. So for us individuals, it is through these qualities. So what are these three qualities? In the translation or in the purport, Prabhupada gives a reference to the three energies of the Lord. He talks about Sambit, Sandhini, and Nadini. You might have heard the philosophical concept that there are energies of the Lord. What does that even mean? For me, that was the biggest question. I would read this philosophy and I was like, but how does that apply to me? Is this higher philosophy? Let me just I would gravitate towards what applied to me. Now, we can simply understand these energies as, what should we use? What's my example? Just 1 second. Okay, I'm going to start talking about just these three energies. Let's start with the Sandhini energy of the Lord. So we'd say that that the Lord has these three energies, and these three energies essentially give us the full understanding of the Supreme Personality of Lord. Think of it as building blocks of that understanding to understand Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tattvataha yaktva deha punarjanma naiti mameti swarjuna. He says that somebody who can understand that I am not ordinary, I'm divine, and can really see how my supposed birth and my supposed disappearance take place, won't take birth again. Now, it's kind of a wild statement if you think of it, that just by understanding, I won't have any rebirth. The reason this statement is a wild statement is because, again, we are understanding it through a material lens. I think I'm a body, although I know I'm not a body, but I think, and I reborn in this birth and death, and this cycle continues. But what the reality is that we are at levels of consciousness, and at that point of our tradition is to raise our consciousness. So when we raise our consciousness to the point of Samvit, Sandhini, and Nadini, then we understand Krishna for who he is. Einstein famously said once that you cannot solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it. So to solve a problem, we need a higher level of consciousness. It's the same thing Prabhupada uses, that we can't solve material problems with material mind. We need spiritual understanding. So what is this spiritual understanding? It's a slightly higher, not slightly, it's a very high level of consciousness. And that's what we are cultivating. That's why Prabhupada called this movement, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He uses the word consciousness. He could have used anything, but he uses the word consciousness because ultimately that's the principle. That's the point that we have to raise. And once we start raising this to the point of Samvit, Sandhini, and Vadini, then we understand who Krishna is. So we almost have to raise our consciousness through our processes that we are doing. We do a Guru Puja, we do a Japa, we do a Sadhana, we do a reading, we eat Prasad, we do association. What's the point of all of these things? Is to raise our consciousness. Ultimately, that's the principle. But despite doing these things, if we are unable to raise our consciousness, then the process is going to continue. It may be a longer path for us. And difference, when Prabhupada talks about different kinds of birth happens, all it means is that what kind of consciousness now am I being born into? And can I raise it up? So the principle is that when we raise our consciousness to these energies, we understand Krishna. And when we understand Krishna, our consciousness is at such an elevated level that at that point the body doesn't matter. That's why certain people can experience spiritual reality while being in this world. We have examples of it in our text, they can see. So now these three energies are basically all complete portion of the Lord. So to understand Krishna, we have to understand these three energies. And these three energies exist in the material world in the 25% reality, and they exist in the spiritual world in their full composition. So Sandhini is the energy of eternality. To understand that something is not affected by time, something that is eternal. In the world that exists, in this world, it is manifested as this temporary body, and it's the relationships and change, and that's how the 25% perverted reflection of Sandhini exists. It's like the matrix, the exact nature of the matrix, the simulation. In spiritual reality, it exists as this knowing that this is eternal. I can keep going on. Think of an example when you were in Kirtan or when you were in a class and you felt that I could just be here for as long and it doesn't matter. That's a little glimpse of Sandhini energy. When you feel that, your favorite Kirtaniya, Janvi Harrison, Hari Prabhu, they're singing and you're in the Kirtan and it goes and it's building and you're like, may this never stop. That's Sandhini. So that's an understanding. Jai Shishi Gaur Nitai Ki. And this Sandhini is manifested. Anyway, I'll come to that. So then the second energy is Samvit. Samvit is the energy of knowledge. And not just any knowledge of Krishna and knowledge of the understanding of the world. Baldev Vidyabhushan in his commentary says that this is not just information, but it's also the capacity of awareness and understanding. So it's Samvit is not just that, oh, I know all this information about Krishna. Do I have the capacity and awareness to hold that information, to see that, oh, this is what it means to be the Supreme Person? Not just, oh, that's the Supreme Person. So it's not just information. It's consciousness manifesting itself as knowledge. So in the material world, this manifests as, we have the books, we have the text, but do I understand it? What does this mean? Did I understand it correctly? What's happening? In the spiritual, in the highest 75% manifestation, it exists as this sense of knowing. Think of a time when you just knew in your heart that this is the right thing to do. I just know in my heart. That's a little glimpse of the Samvit Shakti in our life. You could call it intuition, yeah. That there's this knowing. I would even call it a knowing more than intuition. That I just know this. I just feel clear in my heart, and there's no way in the world that seems opposite. Think of that time for yourself. So that's a glimpse of the Samvit Shakti of the Lord. And then last one is Ladini. In Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila 460, it's described as Krishna's pleasure potency. So not just happiness, but the capacity to hold the joy and satisfaction that comes at that level. We think of examples, think of Haridas Thakur, when he was being beaten up on the streets while he was chanting. He was still unaffected by it. Of course, he was in pain, but he was unaffected by that pain. How? Because he had that capacity to hold that bliss. That's what Ladini Shakti means, the capacity to hold that bliss. Jesus on the cross, deep pain, Srila Prabhupada, heart attacks, and still traveling. How are they able to sustain themselves if you think of it? How? 4 months, 3 months on a ship, multiple heart attacks, and still going forward with the mission. How? Because he was in touch with the Shakti of the Lord. In the material world, this shows up as, oh, this feels good, but will it last? Oh, this taco is very tasty. This is whatever think of it. All the dopamine hits from the like and the validation, and I'm getting that people are liking, or maybe I'm thinking, oh, Are they liking my class? Versus pure bliss, irrespective of the circumstances. So the reason I bring this up is because this verse talks about the difference in material and spiritual worlds. So how do these three energies connect to the verse, right? Why did Srila Prabhupada talk about these energies in the purport? Because remember the three words I told you to remember? Amritam, Shemam, Abhayam. Amritam means deathlessness. What is deathlessness? Eternality. What is eternality? The Sandhini Shakti of the Lord. So the Sandhini Shakti is manifested as Amritam. Mrit means to die, death. Amrit means when it doesn't die. Sometimes we take Charnamrit or Panchamrit. That means that this is eternal, something eternal that has been given to a temporary aspect. So the eternal manifestation of Sandhini Shakti is Amritam, that which never dies. The eternal manifestation of Sambit Shakti is Abhayam, fearlessness. Because when you have full knowledge and capacity to understand, there's no fear, so it's fearlessness. And the complete manifestation of Nadini Shakti is Shemam, that means complete welfare, which means complete bliss. I feel in such a way that I'm not affected by anything that's happening. So that's the reason why Srila Prabhupada talks of these three qualities. Really quickly, I know we are getting towards the end. It's going to take 2 more minutes. 25% manifestation of material Sandhini is Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu, who wanted deathlessness but couldn't get it, choosing a material world, material pathway. 25% representation of Hladini, material Hladini was Duryodhana, trying to capture all opulence but still not feeling it. And material Samvit was Kamsa, always had everything but still didn't feel it. The spiritual representation of these, Prahlad, Abhayam, fearless, doesn't matter what happens. Dhruva experienced deathlessness, lives eternally, one sense from the pole star. And Gajendra experienced shame of the spiritual bliss. When he was hit, he realized that, oh my God, I'm in anxiety. This crocodile is hitting me, is about to kill me. And when he prayed, Prabhupada notes that his consciousness shifted from material to spiritual bliss in that moment, in one moment. So he transcended. So there are examples. The reason I bring this up is there are examples of how we can go from material manifestations of this to the spiritual manifestations. If you don't remember anything from this class, just remember one thing. Abhayam, Shemam, Amritam, Abhayam, Shemam are three qualities that exist both in material and spiritual forms. These are the manifestation of the three energies of the Lord. When we raise our consciousness, we can raise it to such a level that these energies are what we live our life with. And they are possible because it is given in our Shastras and we have examples of it. Closing thought, personal reflection. Think of it today as you do one activity. Am I connecting with the 25% material energy, or am I seeing it from the lens of the 75% reality of my eternal spiritual energy? Just one activity for today. That's a homework for you all. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak with you. I'll take a few questions, then we get to whatever is next. Yes.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much for class. I like that the point you were making about whenever we see like throughout time, like when the disciple is confused or like some kind of trouble, they approach the spiritual master. So I guess my question is, I have a lot of conditioning and things that takes so much time to work through and like bad habits and stuff. Yet the spiritual master is giving a lot of really awesome advice that I want to follow, but it's just like these bad habits are taking some time to, I guess, run its course. So any thoughts on that, like, or advice to like, be patient with oneself and like, get up to the standard you want to be?
If I understand your question correctly, you're asking that how to keep going despite the bad habits and then how to almost minimize their impact on you. Well, I'm with you on the same boat. I'm with you on the same boat. There is conditioning, there's bad habits, there's challenges that come up, there's active fight. My wife can attest to it, sitting right here, that there's active processing of the challenges that come in life. And I can just share from my experience. I think what has helped is there's a verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita that Krishnadas Kaviraj talks about, that Siddhanta boliyache na karalash. That Siddhanta, the Siddhanta is gonna remain whatever it is. Siddhanta will always remain true. And I've realized that when I get too lost into fighting my bad habit, into just that act of fighting, it's always a loss. It's always a loss, because what I'm doing it is to fight this thing, fight this quality that I'm seeing as an obstacle, and I'm just fighting. My consciousness is in fighting this, like, why? And the result of that is shame. A lot of shame comes up in the heart, that but I'm unable to fight it. I don't feel strong enough to be able to fight this thing, and I live in shame. And I continue with that shame, and on the outside everyone is saying, oh, so nice, everything is happening, and internally this fight is going on. What has helped me personally is to see it, that the framework of Siddhanta. For instance, most recently, it's not directly related, but there was a big plane crash that happened in India. A lot of people died, and Rukmini and I were talking about that. How do you deal with the pain that comes up from this? And I said that you can't, if you just look at it from the lens of the pain, just from this, why did this death happen? How come this happened? The only way to kind of rationalize and understand is through the lens of Siddhanta. That's why Arjuna was given Siddhanta by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. But before Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, Krishna had him express his feelings. Arjuna expressed his feelings that physically my hands are trembling, my body is trembling, my mouth is drying up. Then he explained his thoughts. I feel the cause of death will be everywhere. Then he expressed his heart. I don't think I can kill these people. I feel so much love and compassion for them. So Arjuna talked about all three centers of intelligence from his body, mind, and heart. And once that was expressed and understood, then the Siddhanta was given. A lot of people can get into bypassing spirituality, or spiritually bypassing the situation. So we don't have to do that when we are faced with the bad habits. What we do, or what I do, or what my understanding is, that we express it fully to somebody trusted. This is how I feel about it. Rupa Goswami, right? He talks about that we speak to a confidant in our life. It could be a friend, it could be a senior, somebody who can hold that space for us, where we express those, that these are the bad habits, this is what I'm struggling with. And then once we feel fully expressed, then Siddhanta can help us understand it. So we know that we are not the 25%, we are the 75% thinking to be the 25%. The problem lies in the 25%, because we identify with the 25%. I can never defeat this thing. But if I am the 75%, oh, then I have a chance. But I have to feel it out fully. I cannot prematurely go to that point. A lot of people in this movement have done that. And we have seen terrible examples of what has happened when spiritual bypass has happened, that people don't deal with their anarthas, and then all of you know what has happened in the history of our movement. And the people who have dealt with their anarthas, we have seen also the glorious people that have come out of this movement. How can the same movement produce two kinds of people? Because some people have dealt with their anarthas and done it in a manner that is given in our books, of expressing it, of dealing it, of feeling it out. So that's my thing, that how we connect with this is that to feel it out fully, to be with the pain, but to be with not alone, with somebody who can hold that space for us, and then see how's it done. Thank you very much. And I'm way beyond time. Any final questions before we conclude? Okay. Thank you very much for your time today.
Prasade Govinde Brahmani Vaishnave Swapamaya Sakrajan Vishwasane Jayate. Fortunate persons who have faith in Mama Prasad, spiritual food remnants of the Lord, the deity of Sri Govinda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the transcendental Krishna, Ananda Vaishnava. Bhagavad Mahaprasadam ki Jai.